Francovich and Bonifaci v. Italy 1991. In Francovich and Bonifaci v. Italy, the claimants were a group of ex-employees who were seeking arrears of wages following their employer's insolvency. Their claim was based on Directive 8987, which required a member state to provide for a guarantee fund. This was to ensure the payment of employees' compensation in the event of their employer's insolvency. Therefore, since their claim against their former employers would have been fruitless, they brought their claim for compensation against Italy, the state. There were two aspects to their claim: the state's breach of the claimant's substantive rights contained in the directive, which they claimed was directly effective; the state's primary failure to implement the directive, as required under Articles 288 TFEU and Article 4 TEU. In conclusion, the court had already held, in Article 258 TFEU proceedings, that Italy was in breach of its union obligations in failing to implement the directive. In relation to the first claim, the court held that the provisions in question were not directly effective. This was because they were not sufficiently clear, precise and unconditional. However, the claimants were entitled to succeed in their second claim. Thus, the court held that where a state has failed to implement an EU directive, it would be obliged to compensate individuals for damage suffered. This was as a result of its failure to implement the directive if certain conditions were satisfied. That is where the directive involved rights conferred on individuals. The content of those rights could be identified on the basis of the provisions of the directive, and there was a causal link between the state's failure and the damage suffered by the persons affected. The rationale for the principle of state liability existing is from the principle of procedural autonomy and principle of cooperation. This is explained in the Roux case.